Hi there, my name is Wayne Hedlund with Wayne Hedlund Consulting. This video tutorial, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people really don't even understand or realize is available in our Asana workspace, and that is something called task types. In this video, we're going to walk through task types, what they are, how do we set them up, and why they are so valuable and useful. But before I do, let's just talk about something that really nobody likes to talk about, but everyone knows about, and that is this wonderful thing that we have to deal with in our world and in our organization and our teams called human error, right? People mess up. And wouldn't it be so nice if we can get things done without people, right? That's not going to happen. For the most part, we have to deal with the challenges that come from people who are just either don't understand something, they make a genuine mistake, maybe they think they're supposed to do something and they're not, etc. And so as a result, sometimes it's not that big of a deal, and other times it could have a huge impact on our effectiveness, could lose money, or just cause people in our organization to be frustrated or inefficient in being able to get things done. Case in point, here we are with a project that I just for fun called human error. But, we have 3 tasks that are reference tasks. What does that mean? These are non-actionable. They're not supposed to be assigned to anybody. This is just where if we click inside the task, we theoretically might see a description or an attachment that has information that we want to have for context for that project. This task should never get marked as complete. But of course, we can tell people all we want. Hey, don't mark those tasks complete. Someone's going to come in there and either maybe they're not very tech savvy, or they think that they read it and now they're done, or whatever reason, and then they mark this as complete. In this particular case, it's a little ugly to see something complete that's not supposed to be, but where that can get really messy is if we have our projects set up to filter by incomplete tasks, which is what we recommend. Then if we mark that as complete, not only is that a big mistake, but now it's gone, and the next person that comes in and said, hey, I thought the scope was supposed to be in here and I don't see it, right? So that would be an example of human error and something gets messed up. Another situation that oftentimes will happen is if we have a task that needs to be handed off to multiple people. Let's just take this task right here, submit preliminary plan. It's assigned to my friend Jesse. And so let's say that Jessie comes in here and the first subtask, she's supposed to do something, and she does it, but now she has a question. Maybe she comes in here and she mentions one of her colleagues and says, a question, do you have that report, right? Or something like that. And in this particular case, she could just go ahead and mention him, but maybe she also wants to hand that off to Fred. But she forgot to, or maybe she handed it off to Fred, but she forgot to change the due date. Or perhaps Fred attached the file, but forgot to re-hand it back to Jesse, right? So that would be another situation where we're having tasks that we're trying to hand off is not working very well. The last thing I will mention is Asana has this native approval approval task type that's already there for us, which is great. And if you're using the advanced tier or one of the enterprise tiers, it's available for us. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they get frustrated because if any of these options get selected, so my friend Edna is supposed to approve something, let's say that she has requested changes. Well, unfortunately, when she requests that as changes, Asana also marks it as complete. So even if she puts a note in there and comments, or whatever else, the task is technically marked as done. And again, it disappears if our filter is turned on. So again, it's not necessarily human error in that scenario. It's just depending on how you're trying to use Asana, it might not work very well. All right, so those are a few examples of human error or where the work that we're trying to get done isn't getting done well. So what we're going to talk about now is how to kind of alleviate that potential for human error by building some custom task types. Now, what in the world is a task type? So keep in mind, a task type is basically us setting up a task so that it is telling us a certain kind of action that we want to have happen. Again, I already showed you the approval task. Let's just talk about a regular task right here. This task just says do something. And with this task, the task type is it's just a standard actionable task, and I can mark it as complete. An approval task has to do with approval, and I mark it complete by selecting one of the categories. There's also something called a milestone task type, which basically tells us it's bolded, it's got a little bit of a different look here, and it tells us that this is an important milestone or benchmark that we're wanting to make sure gets done in a timely fashion. You could watch some of my other videos about milestones and how those work, right? These are some of the native task types that Asana has. But as we can look right now, we're going to find out sometimes we really need or it would be helpful to have other task types that will give us a little bit more power over what happens when we mark something here, when we select an option. Now, this is not to be confused with a custom field. Like, we can pull in a custom field, and that's all well and good, not started or in progress. This is providing context or information about what's going on with the task. This is different than a task type, which is actually determining what's going to happen with the task. All right, let's go ahead and talk about some use cases, show off a little bit of some ways that you can do this, and then we'll also build a task type together. So here's the first kind of maybe a use case that I've already kind of highlighted, and that is a reference task. And so you'll notice here, based on a regular task, do something right here again, you'll see that it looks a little bit different. This one has this little mark complete option. But let's say I don't want my peeps to mark things as complete. I've created a special task type called a reference task. And when I try to mark it as complete right here, what happens is it instead gives me options. It's saying, hey, what kind of reference task is this? Is there a resource? A statement of work would be a resource, or it might be an SOP, or maybe I have contact information, and this is a reference task that has email address and phone number of maybe someone important or some key stakeholders, and so I have it marked as a reference task. Now, when I mark these as the different kinds of tasks, all it's really saying is hey, don't do anything. Don't mark the task as complete. Then we have this other one at the very bottom that says archive. And to be quite honest with you, I actually have a rule set up that said, hey, if we try to archive the task, you see right here, the rule runs and it unarchives it. So you can't even archive the task unless you know the trick, right? So the rule that I created to help with that is I said, hey, if someone sets the task type to archive and the assignee is empty, don't allow them to mark it as complete. So all I need to do is come in here, assign it to someone, and now if I want to, I can archive it and it will be archived, right? So this is an example of really kind of making sure that our tasks that are reference tasks don't get marked as complete using a task type. Now let's talk about handoff tasks. This is wonderful. There's a lot of really great options for this. For instance, let's say we have a maintenance scenario where a new ticket comes in, and normally we would use a Kanban board for this or something like that, where we come in with new ticket, and then we would maybe walk it through the agile flow of work. But sometimes, especially these maintenance people, they might not even be in the project. They might be just looking at their to-do list on their phone or something like that. So what we've created is a task type that actually gives us 4 options where the task will not get marked as complete. But then check this out. We can also select one of 3 options where it does get marked as complete. So here we have a new ticket. There's a leak in the ceiling. And, a secretary can come in here and say it's scheduled, right? And then the maintenance engineer might be working on the leak, and they might put in here in progress. I'm working on it today, right? And then they might even say it's on hold. I need to get materials or something like that. Or they resolve it, right? And when I hit resolved, you'll see the task is now marked as complete. It's grayed out. If I filter, again, it disappears because the task was marked as complete. So this is a great scenario where we can, have multiple options for marking something as complete, and multiple options associated with incomplete activity for that particular task. Here's another example. And in this example, we've got not started, facilitate a lease renewal, let's say for, a company that is taking care of managing tenants on an apartment complex or something like that, right? So facilitate lease renewal for Jay Henderson. And right now it's not been started. Okay, now the notice has been sent. That's great. Terms are in negotiation. So you see it's the same exact task, and it's just being handed off. And of course, everyone knows when we hand off, it could also be that the task needs to be assigned to a different person. And that's just, understanding how to facilitate or use Asana's rules feature. You can also use AI for that as long as you're okay with using some of the context or tokens. Here the tenant has signed. So for me, all 4 of these options are set up to be incomplete. Like they haven't been marked as complete. We're just walking that task through the different stages. But now we've countersigned and we filed and we're good to go. Probably we should have had another option in there that maybe would have been canceled, right? Maybe the tenant decided to not renew, and I probably should have put that in there as well. Right now, the last thing I'll mention as a use case is something that may be interesting for those of you who are perhaps not on the advanced or enterprise tier, but you still want to facilitate approvals. And as well, remember the problem I mentioned over here where if we mark something as change requested, Asana marks it as complete. So we can actually create our own custom approval type so that the functionality that we want to have happen will take place for us. So in this particular case, I have an approval budget task, and watch what happens here. First of all, I have 1, 2, 3. These 3 right here are actually marking the task or keeping the task as incomplete. Why would I do an approval task as incomplete? Because often when something gets approved, there's still something that needs to happen. Now that the budget has been approved, we maybe need to notify someone or do something else. So perhaps we don't want to mark that as complete quite yet. In fact, we probably should add one more option there, which I did not do, that says, hey, it's actually been completed, right? Or we can set that as approved. So we'll talk about that here in a moment. But in this particular case, I've combined this also with some rules. So if changes requested is set up, and let's just say that this was assigned to my friend Edna, and she needed to get this done by today. So instead of marking as complete, she's going to mark it change requested. So you see, the task is still marked as incomplete, but I have a rule here that said it went to the person in charge, in this case Fred Flintstone, and Fred has 3 days to get it done, right? So that's great. So Fred is now able to come in here and say, all right, I took care of those changes in the budget, probably would put it back over to pending approval. I told Asana to automatically reassign it to my friend Edna and give her a couple of days to work on it. And now Edna might come in here and approve. And now it's going to be assigned to the person in charge of facilitating that approval. That's going to be Jesse, etc. Now, again, I failed to add an option here to complete this approval. So let's fix that. And in this case, we're going to actually come in here and look at a test task type scenario. Okay, we'll do a test task type scenario. First of all, let's fix the modified approval task that I had. And so where do we do this? So inside of the project itself, we're going to pop over to customize and look for the task types and templates option. And inside here, you'll see a number of task types that I have already added to this project, right? Traditionally, you'll only see task, milestone, and approval. But if you click add task type, you'll see the library of other task types that have been created by others in your organization that you have access to, or you can go ahead and create a new one. In this case, I need to adjust my custom approval because I failed to add that final completed option. So I'm going to click custom approval edit task type. And here is the interface for a task type that's already been set up by me. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the category of completed or done, one more option. And I might come in here and you can add a particular what do you call it, emoji or something in here that works for you. So for me, I'm going to add this little checkbox. Oops, sorry, I should probably do that. Actually, I got to give it a name first. Complete, right? We'll just call this complete. There it is, the checkbox. So I've given it a little bit of emoji. I've got the complete option. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now we can come back over here and my friend Jesse can finally say, yeah, I took care of my part and it's now complete. And we see the task got marked as complete. So let's start from scratch and create our own task type. We're going to pop over to customize, task types and templates. And then remember, go ahead and search to see if something has already been created. If not, you can go ahead and make a new one. And inside here, there's basically 3 stages or steps. The first step is going to be to give it a name, right? So we'll call this Wayne's stuff, right? Wayne's stuff. And so we have 2 categories inside here. The first category is the active category. This is where we're going to decide if the task is going to remain incomplete or not. And we have the done category. So inside the active category, we'll just kind of switch this around and say, we'll keep it at not started, but I don't particularly like the red color for not started. So I'm just going to give it a gray over here. And then if I want to, I can also give it a custom character. Instead of having the N be there, I might come in here and, if I want to, give it a question mark or something like that. And it'll just give it that little icon that we want. And then for the next one, waiting on Wayne, right? I'm just making this up as we go. And in this one, maybe we'll keep it, maybe like a nice, color here, and we'll keep the W to say Wayne's got a problem there, and then I'll do one more that says in progress, and this one here maybe we'll give it a light green that says something is getting done, and I might even do a character in here. We'll just kind of leave it as, maybe we'll just change that to a P, and we're good to go. Right now, I also have the done category. And down here, I can have one or more options where we're going to mark the task as complete. Now, for me, I'm going to just leave the completed there, but I'm going to go ahead and put that check mark in there that I like, make it look a little nicer. And because I know that this color green is going to be the color of all of these task types, I actually don't prefer having a color. Because I just kind of want my completed tasks to disappear and not shout at me. So I tend to use one of these 2 colors here to kind of minimize the visual overload that can happen. And again, if I wanted to add another type down here, I can as well. And maybe we're going to say canceled. And for this one, perhaps I'll put in an X. And by the way, you can do an emoji, right? So if you wanted to throw an emoji in here instead, you can go ahead and do that and give it a little bit more of a visual, orientation, whatever you'd like. So here we go. I've created my first, or I've created not my first, but I've created a task type called Wayne's stuff. Not a very good name. Keep in mind that when you create a task type, it's available in the library for others, for other projects. And I think we're good. I'm going to call that create type. And now we're going to just say, finish video tutorial, and that maybe will be assigned to Wayne, and I'll give it a due date of today. But now you're like, okay, let's go ahead and switch this, because right now it's just a standard task. I'm going to right click on it and convert it to, there it is, Wayne's stuff. And we can see it starts off in that starts off at the very top row of the options, but now we can say it's in progress, I'm working on it. And as soon as I finish this video, I can come in here and say completed, and it's been marked as complete. All right, so that is kind of a highlight of how to set up and use task types to get things done. Great for Agile or Kanban boards. Wonderful to be combined with rules and automation so that when a particular task type gets selected, something happens, a comment goes, or a message gets sent via Slack, or something gets assigned, or a new subtask gets created, or any number of other things that you might want to have done. So great potential for all kinds of automation to do what? To reduce the potential, right, for the human error that we all are so afraid of. So hopefully this will give you some great ideas to be able to maximize and create more efficiency in Asana. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous day. Bye now.